my name is Jacqueline. I am a corporate flight attendant and welcome to my YouTube channel. So before we get started, I am gonna do like a shameless self-promotion, ask you guys for a favor, but I looked at my YouTube analytics and most of my views are from non-subscribers. And I feel like for not really a new channel, but for a channel that's newly uploading frequently, I have a decent amount of subscribers. There are about 2,000 of you. But like I said, my views are coming from you guys who are not subscribed. So I am gonna ask before we get into everything if you would subscribe to my channel. And thank you for doing so. So today I'm here to record a follow-up video for my video, what it is really like to commute as a flight attendant. I had a lot of positive feedback on that video and a lot of duplicate questions, and I thought that I would just take 6 questions that were answered pretty frequently and do kind of a part 2, kind of a follow-up to that video. If you have not yet watched that video, I will link it down below for you guys. This way you get a full understanding of what it truly is like to be a flight attendant that commutes. All right, getting into it. One of the most common questions I was asked is, do I, as a corporate flight attendant, commute for work? I do not commute from work. There are a few benefits to being a corporate flight attendant. If you're contracting, you can pick up trips anywhere you want. So if I live in New York and I see a trip in California, I can send my resume to them and my food portfolio to the people who are looking for a contract flight attendant to work a trip, and I can fly my butt to California and work that trip. Also, I am working for a company now. I did tell you guys that. It's not just strict corporate contract flight attending, but there's reposition trips. So sometimes the plane will be based somewhere and we will be flown on a positive space ticket, meaning we're not flying standby. The company bought us a ticket to fly to the plane to start the trip wherever the plane may be housed. So that's not considered commuting. That's more of a reposition kind of trip, but there are instances where corporate flight attendants could start work not where they live. Also, I would like to say, even though I am working for a company, I feel like potentially I could live in a different state and fly to work to make my trips happen. So certainly you can commute as a corporate flight attendant. Schedules are a little bit different than the commercial airlines. We don't always know what trips we're gonna be flying on for the entire month. Sometimes there are pop-up trips. I've only had one in the 1.5 years that I've been doing this, but I would have needed to be in town for it. So it's definitely something that can happen. I just don't know if it frequently happens or if it happens as much on the commercial flight attendant side. All right, question number 2 is for the commercial flight attendants out there. I was asked, are you allowed to commute as a reserve flight attendant? Yes, you are allowed to commute as a reserve flight attendant. How reserve worked for my airline company who I used to fly for is we would have blocks of days on and blocks of days off. So you can be called anytime during that block of days for any trip that the airline needs you to work. So if you are a reserve flight attendant and you plan on commuting and you have a 6-day block, you need to get there by midnight, the start of your 6-day block, and you need to stay in your base city until those 6 days are over and you are released from duty. So certainly you can commute as a reserve flight attendant. It does take more time because you don't know exactly what your schedule is going to be. So for example, if you were a line holder who was commuting and you knew you had a 3-day trip, but it didn't start until nighttime, you could fly into base that day and not really waste a lot of your time commuting. But like I said, as a reserve flight attendant, you go on duty right at midnight. You have to be there right at midnight. So you're probably flying into your base the day before or the night before your reserve shift starts. And you're just sitting around in a crash pad waiting for the phone call from crew scheduling. Looking at my cheat sheet here. Can you be assigned to a different base as a flight attendant? Yes, and that is scary. So you can be assigned to a different base if there is a need for flight attendants to go to a different base. I don't feel like this is something that happens very often. I remember before I started commuting, there was talks about me, people at my seniority, not me specifically, but flight attendants around my seniority being sent to other bases. And there actually were flight attendants who were sent to other bases. However, they weren't permanent moves. So reserve flight attendants generally would be sent from the base that I was working at to a base that was up and coming and didn't have quite enough staffing yet. So they would sit reserve at the other base, which I feel like is probably better than sitting reserve in your home base, except for if you had to sit in the airport for your entire reserve shift, because that's just not that fun. But if you got to stay in a hotel, like you could kind of tune out and veg out and just wait for the phone to ring. I wasn't ever forced to switch bases or pick up trips out of other bases. And if you watched the first video, you knew I choose to commute to Chicago for 2 years. This way I could get a better schedule and not be told so much what to do by crew scheduling. I kind of had more freedom over my schedule and my life, but certainly you can be asked to move to a different base if the company needs you to work at a different base. Basically, as a new flight attendant, or even if you're a pretty senior flight attendant and you just work for one of those big companies where it takes like 20 years to get a decent line, crew scheduling has the control over your life and you are doing what they need you to do. You don't really have a say. So if you're gonna be placed somewhere, you're gonna be placed somewhere and you just have to accept it because that is a part of the flight attendant job. Okay, I got this question asked a lot, but worded differently throughout all of the questions that were asked. But people were wondering, will the company pay for your relocation? And how I took that is, if I live in this city and state and I am hired to be a flight attendant in this city and state, will the company pay for me to move? No, they will not pay for you to move. When I was first hired as a flight attendant, I was hired with US Airways and the base was Phoenix, Arizona, and I did not live in Phoenix, Arizona. I also didn't really want to live in Phoenix, Arizona. I wanted to live where I was used to living and to where my family and my friends were and my pets were. And I was like, whatever, I'll just commute. We'll make this an easy thing. I was so naive and I had no idea that commuting is never, in fact, an easy thing. So no, the company was not willing to offer to uproot my life where I was living and move me to Arizona. Had I choose to live there, that would all be on my own dime, kind of on my own time because I had to be there on crew scheduling's timeline, but it would be up to me to get everything done. Anytime you move bases, it is up to the flight attendant to get anything done. So if you didn't watch the first video, I kind of explained how commuting works, and just because you're given a trip in a certain base doesn't mean the company will fly you to that base. You have to get there on your own. So sometimes you're flying standby. And if it's the holidays, flights are really full. So you might have to go out a day or two in advance. And it's time consuming and you stay in hotels and it gets expensive. And it's really just a hassle, but the airline doesn't owe you anything. I feel like I'm not really making airlines sound to be like a great option for employment, but it's such a desired job and people just do what they have to do to take these jobs. So if you want to be a flight attendant and you don't live in a city where there's a base, you got to make it happen. You're either going to move or you're going to commute. Neither one of those is the most fun option. You just have to do what is best for you. My next frequent question was, can you explain what a crash pad is? Yes, I can certainly tell you what a crash pad is. A crash pad is a housing site. It can be an apartment. I knew of crash pads that were based in hotels, or it could be a room in someone's home. And basically, a flight attendant signs up to literally just crash there, meaning go to sleep, commute in, wait for their shift to start, and then leave. It is not permanent housing. A lot of people don't want crash pads for reserve flight attendants because a lot of times reserve flight attendants sit around all day and wait for the phone to ring. And if you're housing someone in your personal space, like that's probably not ideal. Roommates are not fun, and reserve flight attendant roommates commuting are probably not fun either. So basically, crash pad is a room that you rent at a very low rate. Usually there's bunk beds. Usually there's a ton of people staying in them with you. One bathroom for all the girls or the guys who are flight attendants needing to get ready for work. You post your schedule so people know who's coming and going. You sign up for tub times if you need a certain time to shower and you want to make sure that you're guaranteed your slot. You pitch in for the cleaning. You pitch in for the cooking. It's like college living, but to make sure that you're in base to get to work on time. It's like a dorm for adults. So I never did the crash pad route. I was buddy bidding as a commuter. So me and Rachel would always fly to Chicago at the same time, and hopefully the same time because she was senior to me, and fly home from Chicago at the same time. So if we ever needed to split hotel costs, we just split it right down the middle, or I would get the first hotel of the month, she would pick up the second hotel of the month, and we would balance it out that way. So I did not use a crash pad for commuting. By the time I had started doing it, I had pretty good seniority, and sometimes I was just able to fly into Chicago and start my trips right away and not need a hotel. So cost-wise, it wasn't crazy expensive for me to be a commuter, but I did have to pick up the cost of a hotel room every once in a while. And the last question that I got was, is there a commuter hotel that flight attendants can stay at? Like, yes and no. Earlier in this video, I mentioned the airlines don't need to do anything for you or provide you with anything. If you need to get to work, you need to get to work on your own. However, there are hotels who are kind and they like to help flight attendants out. So there were a bunch of near the airport hotels in Chicago that did offer a crew discount for flight attendants. So you show your badge. Obviously, it still has to be active. And if you're not an active employee, the airline does like everything they can to make sure you turn your badges in. But you show your crew badge and you get a discounted rate on a hotel room for the evening. So that's what Rachel and I were doing in Chicago. I want to say our room was like $47 each night that we stayed there. So between the two of us, it's not that expensive. And it was worth paying a little bit extra to stay at a hotel with a friend rather than going into a crash pad, because there's drama. There's people who start their trips at 3:30 in the morning and are up all night preparing for that. There's people who get home from their trips at 10 o'clock in the morning and need to sleep through the day and want everyone in the house to be quiet. So crash pads are total chaos. Plus, it's a revolving door. People are always coming in and out because flight attendants always need somewhere to stay. So you don't know who you're gonna get. You don't know how clean they're gonna be. Not that hotel rooms are clean, trust me, I understand that. But I feel like when it was just me and my friend, it was more manageable. I had more sanity. I am not a good candidate for a crash pad. So anyway, I just got off on a tangent about crash pads again. But to answer the question, there's not a commuter hotel, but there are hotels who offer airline-friendly rates to flight attendants or flight crew because they know we usually don't make that much money. Okay, that was my list of the 6 questions that I was asked repeatedly, either in the comment section on my commuter video or through DMs on my Instagram page. If you do have additional questions, certainly leave them down below. I started this channel to help people who want to be flight attendants or for bouncing ideas off of each other to better ourselves as flight attendants. So I do love that interaction. Please feel free to leave any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, anything you have down below. Also, as I said in the beginning of the video, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave me a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you.